All right, Greg, we're back, and in the second segment, I am so excited to be talking basketball again. It just makes me happy when it's basketball season. I have spent every extra moment I have over these past couple of days, week, watching basketball games. I subscribe to League Pass, and I'm paying my $40 a month so that I can watch preseason basketball games. That's the level of sickness I have. And I want to talk about Caris LeVert, and he's the guy that I think is going to be one of the catalysts to this Brooklyn team really taking the next step. I know, obviously, the headliners are the Kevin Durant's of the world and the Kyrie Irvings of the world. But Caris LeVert is a guy who, to me, looks primed to be that perfect third option on this team. He's a guy who has seen his minutes and his points rise every single year. We've seen his efficiency rise every single year. And in my mind, he is primed for a giant breakout season because he's going to have less ball handling responsibilities and less defensive focus on this Nets team, with Kyrie dribbling for 25 seconds and then trying to bail himself out at the last moment. LeVert is, in my mind, and I struggled with this argument for a while with the Most Improved Player award, even with myself. Because I started thinking about, originally I was going to go Kristaps Porzingis, but that was going to be Comeback Player of the Year, and that doesn't really exist anymore. It's sort of been morphed into Most Improved Player, and a guy like Fred VanVleet and the like. But I kept coming back to Caris LeVert. I think we're going to be looking at a season where LeVert plays about 29 to 31 minutes a game, scores 18-5, and he is a clear-cut emerging star in the NBA, and then good enough to get himself that Most Improved Player award.
Yeah, I mean, Caris LeVert was certainly very impressive. Last year obviously missed some of that time due to injury. He's a guy I liked a lot coming out of Michigan. Mm-hmm. But I have another guy for you. And
tell me.
Let's just say this. You have a guy who went from shooting 54% from the field to 56% from the field. Went from 56% from the free throw line to 60% from the free throw line. Went from 16.9 points per game to 17.8 points per game. And now he's heading into his third year. Mm-hmm. And something's changed in this man's world. And what that change is that he might actually be willing to shoot three-pointers in a real game. The man is Ben Simmons, Chris. Ben Simmons adding a three-point shot, and if he shoots anywhere between 30 to 35% from three, this award, you can lock it right on up, circle it right on in, and just deliver it to his house the day the season ends.
Okay, the question I have to ask you is, what kind of frequency is he shooting the three with in this 30 to 35% world that you live in? How many threes a game?
2 to 4.
2 to 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so he 2 to 4. Jesus Christ. Okay, so in your world, he's making it. He's averaging at least one made three a game.
Yeah, go 1 for 3 every game. It's fine.
In this world, I think Ben Simmons is MVP, not Most Improved Player.
He's winning both. Figured it's a package.
So you are clearly buying the Ben Simmons hype. All right.
Chris,
look,
I've
as a Sixers fan, I'm good with it.
I've never been more in on something outside of the Flyers and Carter Hart absolutely sealing the Stanley Cup last night with his first career shutout and a 2-0 start. Can't wait for them to break my heart. Funny, heart. But this Simmons thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's fine. This Simmons thing. I've never been more all in on something in my life. I don't care if it was the Chinese pro team. Mm-hmm. I don't care that it was the preseason. The fact that he actually went out there and in public, not in warm-ups, not in some gym run.
Because people don't know, warm-ups are private. Warm-ups are private. People do not know that. There's a curtain that drops around the court, and nobody can see them play.
All right, but I'm talking about a very packed stadium that was begging for a three-pointer. And he delivered.
He did deliver. It was an exciting moment.
Give me this. If he adds this to his game, and he's not going to get considered for MVP because there's too many other people who
I
just
th-
put the ball
I
in the
think you're
basket more
wrong.
than him.
In
I
in a world where he's making a 3 a game, he is effectively LeBron James.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I can agree with that. I just don't know if they would be willing to give it to him yet. Does that make sense?
Well,
Like
yeah,
LeBron has
because
what,
yeah,
three
yeah.
MVPs?
How old was that fellow who won the MVP award last year? Because they only give it to like 30-year-olds, right?
Chris, I don't even remember who won the MVP last year. If I'm being
You
perfectly honest.
okay? Are we being you're being completely serious here? Because I mean, I feel like you've already conceded the loss for this.
I have
But
never and will never concede.
you've conceded many times. But the 2019 NBA MVP was a gentleman named Giannis
I
Antetokounmpo.
have no idea why or how I forgot that. I kept thinking
And
Westbrook, and then when you said Young, I went back to the Derrick Rose Bulls days.
uh-huh.
I got all flustered. But I mean,
And Giannis was 23 when he won the MVP. Ben Simmons will be 23 all season long.
sure, but I think my point is that there are more Ben distributes more than Giannis does, and he doesn't always look for his shot first. So I don't think the point total will be there for him to be considered for that MVP thing. I think points matter in MVP voting.
I think points matter, but if you're talking about a guy who adds a legitimate 3-point shot, and we have to assume that translates to some degree of comfortability with shooting. Wow, that was difficult for me. Shooting a regular jump shot as well. I mean that 17 points a game goes up to 22 pretty easy. 22, 8, and 8 is those are pretty MVP numbers.
Yeah, they're definitely really, really, really good numbers. I don't know if it's gonna, I don't know if it's gonna be enough in this situation. Now it might, because the MVP is really just like a media narrative award. It's not really about who's the best player on the court. It's weird how that works. As a self-proclaimed LeBron James, I guess hater.
Yeah, the word I would have used.
I still recognize him as arguably the best. Maybe people are catching up to him now that he's a little bit older. But the guy was dominant. You don't go to 7 or 8 straight finals. You don't basically make every team you go to a contender just because of your presence without being the best player. And he has 3 MVPs. It's a little bit of a joke.
LeBron's the 4th best player in basketball for me right now, behind Giannis, Harden, and Kawhi Leonard.
I was waiting for you to say like Jokic or something.
I love Jokic.
Jump out my window.
I love Jokic so much, but fat NBA superstar, God bless him. But all right, well, let's talk about your boy LeBron and his Lakers. Over at Bovada, they've got the Clippers, the favorite at 150 minus 150, and the Lakers at plus 260 to win the Pacific. Who do you like there?
I like the Clippers. I know Anthony Davis brings a big, a big presence to that Lakers team, and he's obviously a top tier superstar in the NBA. But what we just watched Kawhi do last year, it's impossible to count against that guy and root against him. He also has, a pretty complete team behind him. Obviously Paul George, but like the rest of those players on the court are actually probably even better than the team that he had last year.
Landry Shamet, baby.
Yeah. The aforementioned Landry Shamet. I know it brought us to bias, but
no, it was the right. It was the right trade. 100% of the time, it was the right trade. But sure. That's not to say that you're right and it doesn't hurt. Are you concerned about load management for Kawhi and Paul George? Because obviously Paul George is coming off of the shoulder surgery, and we don't even have a complete timetable for when he's going to be back yet. You have to think they're going to load manage him as well. George is probably going to end up playing like high 40s, low 50 games this year. Kawhi probably right around 60. Does that factor into this at all? Does that let you consider the Lakers at Bovada there?
Yeah. In terms of the division, it might trickle down into really mattering, because I guess now in today's load management version of the NBA, really winning the division isn't the priority. It's making sure that you're in the playoffs.
Right.
The Lakers may be the better play there just because they have the plus odds. I mean, minus 150 is a lot to lay on a team to win a division in the load management era when you think about it. That's what makes the NBA so much harder to, like, future-wise to bet on, because you really never know how teams are going to react. I mean, you see these over-unders released for teams, and you're like, well, what if they sit this guy 15 games for, rest or old age in Tim Duncan's world? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, too. Basketball is the sport more than any other where a superstar pushes a team from good to great. And that means they're also like at the mercy of an injury for one player, taking them from good to not so good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, how bad did the Sixers get when they, had a hobbled Robert Covington? That was a superstar
God,
injury.
I want Bob back so bad.
I'm sitting here taking cheap shots. I apologize. I apologize to all the Bob guys.
And what is your beef with Bob? The guy did nothing but play his heart out for the Philadelphia 76ers.
It's not Bob. It's the people that like Bob. It's the people that chirp the Phillies for taking their time and firing Gabe Kapler when your franchise hasn't won a title in 36 years. Your franchise hasn't been really relevant in the title picture since 2001 when they made the finals. And you sit and chirp other organizations that have been more successful in that time frame. It's weird to me for people to take shots and weird defenses of a team that essentially stole money from their fans for 4 years. Like that's something that I don't think a lot of people look at. They look at the process and how funny it is to hang a banner of the GM that got fired. Like, as great as things have eventually turned out, we essentially were stolen from for 4 seasons by a team that was purposefully putting a product out there that was not a competent NBA team.
But would you accept that again for these results? I would.
Sure. I mean, I guess you almost have to, but to glorify that time as some sort of great moment in Sixers history, I hate that. I hate it.
Well, it wasn't a great moment in Sixers history, but it was a prelude to a great moment in Sixers history.
Yeah, it was great. We got to replace the fire GM with a guy that had burner accounts on Twitter. Like,
look, I'm not going to argue it wasn't a weird story because it was, and I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh man, every night I got excited to tune in and watch Henry Sims and Scottie Wilbekin, but But it got the Sixers to the place they are now, and they took advantage of a system that was able to be taken advantage of. I would be a lot more concerned if I was a fan of a tanking team with these flattened odds, because you're just not guaranteeing yourself anything. You saw what happened with the Knicks last year, dropped, and they get the wildly inefficient R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett, for whatever reason, is kind of like Robert Covington is to you. I just irrationally hate him. I think he's a useless NBA player. I think he's a selfish chucker who is going to be a guy it's going to be very difficult to build teams around. But I would be thrilled to get Covington back. Covington goes to Minnesota, plays 34 minutes a game, and he shoots 37% on 6.7 threes a game, while also chipping in 5.7 rebounds, 2.3 steals, and 1.1 blocks, and 14 points a game. Wouldn't you love to have Robert Covington as the first guy off the bench on this team?
Right, but you see here, Chris, is that the irrational people don't think that he should be coming off the bench. They just so happened to have Tobias Harris at this point. But if Toby wasn't here, and Covington would start every single game where Horford or Embiid was load managed. So he would probably start, 40 games a year, 35 games a year. He is the perfect piece to have right now, along with future NBA Defensive Player of the Year Matisse Thybulle, causing havoc in that backcourt. Yeah,
I just love the versatility.
Those Pac-12 guards, I love them.
Hey, Thybulle looks really good. He's a useful player. He's not going to be a superstar, but he's a useful player. I would love to have Bob back. Dario is the guy who I'm a little bit confused as to What's happened to him? He looks just completely uncomfortable playing basketball at this point.
Well, I don't necessarily think he wanted to leave the situation he was in, and
Oh, no way.
there's certainly an adjustment period because he's going to be used different in a different system. He's playing with different players who, for all intents and purposes, I mean, the T-Wolves don't exactly have the same caliber of talent that the Sixers did or still do.
And now he is a Phoenix Sun.
Yeah, well, no, I know. I'm talking about last year, but as you now move into another completely different world where the Suns are year in and year out the bottom dweller of the NBA with no real. I mean, you want to hope that there's some change in sight, but I don't necessarily know what that's going to be for the Suns. As good as Devin Booker is, and the potential of I can't think of his name, of course, but the big guy who went to Arizona. Yes, DeAndre Ayton. That's like, I don't know what they have there. It's like too many pieces that don't necessarily fit together.
Well, it's a totally different team right now. This is just an indication of how critically important the draft is and not whiffing on draft picks. But this is a totally different looking team if they take De'Aaron Fox instead of Josh Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
You now have three potential, NBA All-Stars in Fox, Booker, and Ayton, and a core to really build around that's going to attract other people. Instead, you take Josh Jackson. He's an unmitigated disaster, traded to the Grizzlies, and he's going to play in the G League this year. Just kills a franchise. That division is kind of interesting to me, though. I see at the end of it, we talked about the Clippers and the Lakers. Warriors are plus 400. Kings are plus 5,000. Suns plus 25,000 at Bovada. Do you think the Warriors deserve to be mentioned with the Clippers and the Lakers?
Man, I think they do because they still have Steph Curry and they still have Draymond Green, who are perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll eventually get Clay back, and if they're within striking distance, it would not necessarily be the worst bet in the world to just throw a little bit on there just to see if they can actually pull that off. I think Steph's going to be out to prove a little bit of something this year, too, with the departure of Kevin Durant and all the chatter that's gone on back and forth, about who's, what's the real reason why the Warriors kept winning? Was it because of Durant? What was their relationship, that sort of thing?
Greg, I forget. Did the Golden State Warriors break the NBA record for most wins in a season prior to the acquisition of Kevin Durant?
They did, Chris. They did.
So
that's why I'm not sleeping on this
They might still be
team.
pretty good.
Yeah, and people continue to forget that they added a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who,
it's going to take a while for him to fit, I think, but
sure.
he will get there.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who had to be a number one option on a Nets team last year that made the postseason. He gets to kind of sit back and start off as the third option, then eventually the fourth option when Clay comes back. I mean, you can maybe argue that offensively he's probably a better option than Draymond, depending on where they're shooting from on the court. But I mean, the fact that they were able to scoop him up is actually insane.
This was the year of the good value in the sign and trade. I think both Golden State and Philadelphia got really lucky in getting returns for losing stars. Golden State gets Russell and Philadelphia gets Josh Richardson in the Miami trade. I want to, before we leave this topic, and we're going to in a second, I want to talk about something that's a little bit weird to me. I'm looking at the odds to win the Western Conference at Bovada, and it's Clippers-Lakers. If you look at the odds to win the NBA championship, it is not that. It is Lakers-Clippers. Do you think there's any logic behind that?
No. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, to me, the thing with the Lakers is I just don't know where their depth is going to come from. I don't necessarily.
Alex Caruso. Come on.
It's great, man. We watch his clips on Twitter and everybody goes crazy.
Yeah, he's white, so it's exciting.
It's to me. I think that the Lakers are going to be fine. I think they're going to be a very good team. I don't necessarily know if they're going to be a team that can compete for an NBA title. I just don't think they have enough pieces right now. Now that could change, trade deadline, buyout guys, all that sort of stuff. I mean, we all know that GM LeBron has the ability to kind of make trades at will. So we'll see. But for now, I don't know why that the Lakers would be above the Clippers to win the NBA championship.
Yeah, the Clippers are going to present maybe the best pair of two-way players. God, I don't want to fall into the traps of hyperbole here, but that at least that we have seen in the last 20 years. I don't know that there's been a two-way combination of as good on offense and as good on defense as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. But what Kawhi did last year with that Raptors team and his run in the playoffs was so impressive. It made everyone remember, sort of why Kawhi was such a big piece of those Spurs teams that were so successful and won a championship, and why he was the Finals MVP. And he even probably exceeded what people remembered with how good he played.
Yeah, those Raptors plus 604th place to win the Atlantic on Bovada. How about Pascal Siakam? Really quick before we get off of this. Does he get better or get a little bit and maybe a lot less effective without Kawhi taking pressure off him?
I'm going to be honest. I never was super impressed with him watching the Raptors play. And
me neither.
It's not because, they beat the Sixers and you're just a bitter Sixers fan. No, that has nothing to do with it.
Why can't it be both?
Well, it probably can be both, but it's not in this case. I would hear people talk about Siakam and how he's the next guy, he's the up-and-coming, he's the future guy, but then he would throw up absolute clunkers in the playoffs. Yeah. There were games against the Sixers where he was almost unnoticeable on the court. And that's with Kawhi Leonard playing. The Raptors have taken a significant step back here in this, the NBA landscape as far as, top-tier teams. I don't see Siakam taking the next step. And I could be wrong, but I think he benefited a lot from having Kawhi on the floor with him all the time.
Fair enough. All right, we'll take a quick break and be right back.